Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. For our first game of the showcase, we turn to the Pinball Wizard. There is no deaf, dumb, and blind kid in this one. This is an action pinball roguelite. We are trying to climb a tower full of monsters, demons, and so on in order to try and defeat the big bad at the top, and we're going to do it using the power of flippers. Our ball in this case is our wizard friend, and you'll need to climb up each floor, beating up as many enemies as you can, collecting resources that you need for health and power, and trying not to, of course, drain out at the bottom. The gameplay loop here, in terms of more on the action side, is that you'll gain access to various powers that will allow you to manipulate your character in different ways. The first one you get is the ability to dash, which will let you kind of adjust their momentum in a direction, as you saw right there. Your mission is to kill all the enemies on each floor, and once you've done that, you'll need to get the key, get up to the exit, and move on to the next. The roguelite elements come in, that the better you play, you'll be able to level up your character, which will allow you to gain various unlocks or upgrade your passive stats. The pinball physics here is definitely on the arcadey side. This is not going to be like a realistic pinball game for, as you can tell, obvious reasons. The main issue that I had with this one is that when you start out playing it, your character just doesn't feel good enough to make a lot of progress. The roguelite nature is definitely in effect in terms of not really being able to do a whole lot, survive a lot of hits, or just be able to move through things relatively quickly without getting the necessary upgrades. And if you're not into it for kind of that progression, the game may be a little bit too slow for you. I like the aesthetic, it is very charming to play, and I think there's a really great concept here, but I would like to see maybe explored with a pure roguelike, or with a little bit more content beyond just the unlocks. So if you're looking for a light action and light pinball adventure, then you should at least give this one a check. For our next game, we turn to something very different. This is Deadeye Deepfake Simulacrum, and I'm pretty sure I butchered that last word. The footage you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of this very interesting game. This is a kind of emergent roguelike cyberpunk hacking action RPG, and probably a few other adjectives we can throw in. It is the far cyberpunk future, and in order to pay off a very outstanding debt, you have become an agent to go on missions to stick to corpse and complete various jobs. However, every time you die, your debt gets higher and higher. So in order to get around, you will need to power your character up, unlock and learn a huge, and I do mean huge, variety of skills, get new weapons, and more. As you can see, despite this being a cyberpunk future, I have the power of necromancy, and I summoned skeletons to help me, which did not do so well. The game itself is built on procedurally generated missions, as you'll go out, complete quests, and try to power up your character so you're less likely to die and gain more debt. There is a lot going on in this game, and admittedly it can be a little overwhelming, especially with the GUI here just being lots and lots of windows and little information panels all around you. But there is definitely something here. The kind of lo-fi graphics really allows it to do a lot of things in this game in terms of various powers, different ways of getting around, and so on. And with the game being in early access, I am curious about how this one is going to end up, especially with all the many ways that you can build your character and really mess with things. If you're someone who likes emergent design and being able to play a game in a whole lot of ways, then this is definitely one that is worth checking out, and especially when the game is out of early access. We turn to another roguelite, but one that is far easier to grasp, and that is Worm Slayer. The footage you are seeing is taken from the demo and may not represent the current version of the game or the actual 1.0 when it is released in 2023. This is an action roguelite where you are entering nests or dens in order to fight giant worms that make your way to the king worm and take them out. The gameplay here is kind of like an Enter the Gungeon-like, as you'll be able to use various weapons, throwables, and more in order to make your way from room to room, and of course everything is procedurally generated. You'll have to swing your sword and use various items in order to try and deal with these enemies that come from all directions. It can be a little bit weird using the sword and to swing and hit things, but once I got into the groove of using the shuriken, we were kind of just like off to the races. From the demo, the game felt good to play. It is built around very short runs, with each kind of floor or biome being about 4 to 5 minutes long, and of course fighting the boss at the end. I don't know what they're going to be doing in terms of any kind of like major variants, unlocks, or things like that, but it did at least feel good to play, and it is yet another action roguelike for fans looking for one that's going to kind of give that Enter the Gungeon, bullet hell adjacent kind of feel to it. And the demo is still up now if you want to give it a check on your own. We now have Somber. This is a Metroidvania style game with a very interesting aesthetic to it. We play as this creature here who's trying to explore and kind of save the day. It kind of gives me almost like a Nightmare Before Christmas or like that kind of vibe in terms of the design. The general gameplay here is definitely pure platforming. Your little ball gains a few abilities as you explore, but you are very vulnerable to all kinds of damage. And you'll need to explore, deal with enemies, and find, of course, lots and lots of upgrades and MacGuffins if you want to see it all. The game definitely wears its Metroidvania design on its sleeves, as when you start playing, you are going to have a lot of different areas open up to you, and as per the course of the genre, you'll need to decide which area you go to, which ones you can do, and then try to remember where everything else was. And that does kind of hurt the game. There doesn't seem to be the same kind of flow or pacing in Somber that I would like to see from the Metroidvania genre. Because it is so widely open, it does mean that you can easily forget or not find where your next location is supposed to be, and then if you do find it, you will need to do all the backtracking to get to it and hopefully remember where everything was along the way. In the gameplay itself, while it does say that this is a challenging platformer, it was on the harder side. If you are familiar with any of the mainstays of the genre, you should be well acquainted to the difficulty that Somber has. While it may not be the longest or the deepest Metroidvania, I still enjoy this one, and if you are looking for one that's going to give you a lot of exploration with some challenge as well, I would at least check this one out. We now have SuperTotalCarnage. This, as you can tell by the footage, is another bullet heaven / VS-like. The footage you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of this. We trade fantasy and vampires for kind of contemporary and demons and monsters. You are a lone soldier and you will have to use a myriad of upgrades, weapons, and other things in order to fight against cultists and other things coming to get you. And everything else should be very familiar to the fans of Bullet Heavens. While I do like the kind of modern day or more contemporary aesthetics and some of the enemy designs look really nice, it still follows in the traditional, or I guess quote unquote, traditional Bullet Heaven style. And if you are a bit tired of that design, I don't know if there is anything this game does that would stand out more from it. I did like, again, the variety of weapons, and there is plans to have a kind of online or multiplayer PvP mode that is going to be added in a future update. I don't know when that is going to be released at the time of recording this. So if you're someone who has to play all the VS Lakes, this one could be worth checking out. But if you're like me and you're looking for some of the more, I guess, interesting or different takes on the design that we've been seeing in 2023, then this game may not go far enough for you. For the last game of our showcase this week, this is HeartWorm, or more specifically the demo for it, which is still available now. This is a modern retro survival horror game. We play as Sam, a woman who is obsessed with dead and the death around her. When she learns of a mysterious house that seems to be connected to the afterlife, she decides to go and explore it. And, of course, things take a turn for this strange and the survival horror-y. As you can tell by the footage, the game is definitely trying to evoke the likes of the original Resident Evils, Silent Hill, that particular era of survival horror. We have fixed camera angles, very slow door opening animations. Combat switches into a kind of third-person shooting, where you'll need to aim and try and deal with the enemies before they get to you. You'll explore all around looking for clues, puzzles, items, MacGuffins, and of course, ammo and resources that you'll need to survive. I like the story of this one, and the game definitely does a great job of emulating the late PS1, early PS2, like that kind of chunky 3D pixel effect that we've come to know and love. If I had any complaints about this game, at least from a technical standpoint, I do wish the load times between doors was a little bit better. There's a noticeable amount of delay as you're going from one room to the next. It doesn't sound so bad when you're watching the footage, but when you're trying to make any kind of progress, going from room to room or going back and forth, it does start to kind of eat away at your time. The game, at least from what we played of it, seems like the puzzles will be on the moderate to moderately challenging side. I don't know if we're going to see like Signalis levels of brain melty puzzles, but again, this was just a demo. And there is certainly potential here. So if you're a fan of survival horror and looking for another moody and modern retro take on it, then definitely check out the demo for HeartWorm and be sure to look at the game when it is released. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to do the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my books wherever they are sold. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where you some of the art and science of games.